Welcome to TOMMO'S Race CHINWAG, your favourite Formula 1 podcast produced by a British biased bloke with a massive Swede full of very questionable wheel knowledge. Broadcast live on YouTube and after the fact on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We have a good old natter about each and every Grand Prix of the season. My name's Tommo, let's talk about it. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening. My name's Tommo and we're live to talk all about the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix. Let's get into it, shall we? Hello everyone here live on YouTube. Hello everyone who's watching after the fact. Also, I think I've kind of resynced up my intro a little bit and it should be a bit more in line. I've definitely noticed it, that my mouth doesn't quite move. And sometimes on these live streams it doesn't as well because of lag and delay. I've tried my best. I've not found an easy solution. No lag today, please. I hope Liam Ludlam, you are spot on. No lag today, please, would be simply lovely. Now, let's start with race review, shall we? We talked yesterday all about the sprint qualifying, sprint race, FP1 briefly as well. And we touched on qualifying, but we'll kind of re-go over that because, of course, post-race, we want to cover all of the race-relevant stuff today. Race rating out of 10. Now, I've got a poll going. On YouTube. If you are here live on YouTube, then you can engage with the poll. About 400 of you have voted already. 15% of you have given it a 6 or above. 44% of you have given it a 5 out of 10. 28% of you have given it a 4. 13% a 3 or below. For me, look, great track. Really enjoy Shanghai as a circuit. Unfortunately, it wasn't the most competitive, most exciting race. The gaps weren't massive. I mean, Oscar, opened up a fair gap at the end between him and Lando, but obviously Lando had his brake issues. And even if you remove Lando from that, between Oscar and George was, I reckon, a good 10 seconds, if not more, by the end. So all in all, it was all right. It certainly wasn't one that will go down in the in our memories for a long time, will it? I've given it a 4 out of 10. I think that's very fair. But well done, Oscar, for converting what was a very, 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 very impressive performance. And 2 Grand Prix and bounce back from the frustration, the disappointment of having his home Grand Prix end the way it did, to take it all, take the spoils, finish ahead of his teammate. Lando still banks the P2, so win first Grand Prix. Didn't score that well in the sprint. Lando only the 1 point on the board, but Lando managed to clutch out P2. Am I going to sneeze? It's there. It's right there. No. Okay. I'm just gonna have my eyes water. That's fine. It's not like I've got 803 people watching me. And thank you, Lucas, for the super chat. I will touch on super chats. I'll do them in kind of a block a little bit later so that I'm not jumping to and from. I want to try and keep things on plan, and I'll make time for super chats midway through the live chat. But thank you, Lucas, for your super chat. I do very much appreciate it. So 4 out of 10 for me, and 31% of you agree. 41% of you gave it a 5. All in all, pretty mid as an event. The sprint was arguably a bit more interesting, to be honest. It happens. Okay, reliability. I mean, unfortunately not for Fernando Alonso, but reliability is sky high at the moment. So, although I suppose, Lando did, 1 lap longer, George probably would have caught him. Although I do wonder how much that was like. Lando knew it was the last lap, so was extra cautious on that last lap and allowed George to get, within, a second and a half George was at the checkered flag. So maybe Lando could have got another lap out. Hard to say. But so I guess from that point of view, reliability was a factor, but it didn't really change the outcome of the race. It didn't really change the excitement. I mean, some of the most, exciting wheel-to-wheel drivers, Max was just kind of on his own the entire Grand Prix. George was kind of on his own the entire Grand Prix. There's a couple of moments in the pit stops, obviously, with Lando and George getting the undercut, but all in all, it wasn't one that, again, to write home about, but the result means we have a very, very, very interesting Drivers' Championship, I think. It wasn't. I fell back asleep around lap 10. To be fair, it was 3 a.m. Well, yeah, it was 7 a.m. UK. So I watched it on my phone in bed, and then, to be honest, because if you'd have watched the post-race sprint, I'm sure all of you did watch the post-race sprint, CHINWAG. When I got up to watch the sprint race, I couldn't fall back asleep, probably till, I don't know, I think I was still awake at like 5:30 in the morning. And so after I watched the race this morning, went out, took a minute for a walk, got some lunch, came back, ate it, sat on the sofa to kind of watch all of the post-race stuff, certain couple of disqualifications, and just all the post-race, just to make sure I've got an idea of how all of the teams have done. And I fell asleep, which is very unlike me, like to nap on the sofa. I'm 32 now, so it's clearly going downhill. And so I had to catch up on some kip, but I'm feeling revitalised, I'm feeling rejuvenated, I'm feeling energised right now, okay? So we are good. Hello, Daniel, good to see you. Race rating for me, 4 out of 10. You lot fairly much in agreement, I would say. So let's briefly touch on qualifying. We did talk about this in the post-race sprint CHINWAG yesterday, but just briefly, Piastri on pole ahead of Russell and Lando Norris, Max, Lewis, Charles, Isaac, fantastic job in qualifying. Antonelli, Tsunoda, Albon were your top 10 going into the Grand Prix this weekend. Liam Lawson was at the back but took a pit lane start. Big changes to his car. They tried something different, and as we know in the race, it didn't really work out for him. And as you know as well, I am keeping track of qualifying head-to-head in terms of average gap, okay? Average delta based on quickest lap times. The furthest session both drivers reached and a representative comparison. I won't be comparing, fresh softs to old softs, or fresh softs to yellow flag, blah, 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 right? And this is how we're looking so far. Verstappen to Lawson is the biggest gap. Gasly to Doohan is the smallest gap. But again, we talked all about this yesterday, so no need to go over this massively. Let's focus more on the race, shall we? Where Oscar Piastri took the win over Lando Norris. In fact, briefly to touch on yesterday's qualifying, Piastri's P1, he actually set 2 laps that were good enough for pole position, making that a little bit extra impressive. And in terms of, from McLaren's point of view, blinder off the line, wasn't it? Oscar got the launch he needed. George got a slightly better launch, which gave him a little nose up the inside. But actually, that kind of worked in the end because Oscar still had enough to hold position, and that opened up the outside of the turn, long turn 1, for Lando Norris to chuck it around the outside and get position on George. And, Oscar Lando leading 1-2 out of that first sector. Worked a treat in the end for old McLaren. Then, of course, Max P4, he ended up being quite quick at the end. Once it was kind of lower fuel, that Red Bull seemed to come alive a bit, but for most of the race, he was kind of in no man's land, as was George Russell. But Mr. Consistent, George Russell, again, Mercedes' consistency has not been a thing you can level at this team over recent years, is it? In this ground effect era. However, George Russell has been consistently delivering. And we'll look at the driver standing shortly, because as long as he can keep doing this, he's given himself a shot. If Mercedes, I don't know what their upgrade strategy is this year, but if they can do something to unlock a bit more pace in this car, as long as George at this stage of the season, where maybe Lando and Oscar trade wins, maybe Max gets in there every now and then, maybe the Ferraris occasionally get up there, but they have their ups and downs. If George can always just be there all the time, and then Mercedes can give him something, just that little bit extra, you can't write him off. You can't write him off as of yet. Esteban Ocon P5. That's right. Yeah, not Charles Leclerc and not Lewis Hamilton P6. Disqualified. Ocon P5 in the Haas, which is unbelievable considering where Haas were in Australia. I thought, you thought, and we know this because we have data on what we thought, that Haas had absolutely capitulated. Things were so bad in Australia. The test wasn't particularly impressive either, but clearly they've found something. They've given Ollie and Esteban something, tools to fight with, and they've managed to clutch up a P5 and a P8. Kimi Antonelli, P6, driver of the day. He was carrying damage. Clara, I did see your message in the chat earlier, and then I had a quick look at Mercedes social media. He caught some, I think it was Charles Leclerc's front wing end plate that actually damaged Kimi's floor, because obviously Charles and Lewis had their lap 1 contact, and that was causing, what's his name? Bradley something at Mercedes, can't remember his surname. He was, 3-4 tenths possibly. Certainly Antonelli made no inroads in the race, and that possibly, that suggests why. So Kimi was carrying damage. And as much as him getting driver of the day was definitely, I've heard it could well be fantasy points. You know, the F1 fantasy community coming together and being like, no, we need Kimi to get good points. I mean, who knows, right? Because there were certainly plenty of other drivers who were up for it more than Kimi Antonelli, but he was carrying damage. So maybe they knew before. Bradley Walsh. No, it's not a little Bradley Walsh. Oh my God, that was loud. Sorry about that. Alex Albon P7. Of course, I'm happy with that. Of course, I am. Lance Stroll P9. Lance, points. Top 10 every race so far this year. And then Carlos Sainz just about squeaks a point. He finished behind Pierre, didn't he? Can't actually remember. But obviously Pierre Gasly also got disqualified for a car being underweight. Isaac Hadjar, Liam Lawson, Jack Doohan, Gabriel Bortoletto, Nico Hulkenberg, Yuki Tsunoda round out your finishes. And again, Fernando Alonso had his brake issues, which mean his race ended on lap 4. And a bad day for Ferrari. The title says it all, doesn't it? Oh dear. Never mind, eh? So, driver standings after 2 of 24 rounds so far this season. It's interesting. I like it. I like what I'm looking at. 44 points for Lando Norris. 8 points ahead of Max Verstappen in P2, who is 1 point ahead of George Russell in P3, who is 1 point ahead of Oscar Piastri in P4. Scintillating. Ferraris aren't even at the races yet, okay? You know, it's like, if anyone's played Sunday League football before, you know when you go like, all right, still 0-0, right? You're actually 4-0 down. It's coming out of half time. Still 0-0, okay? That's the approach Ferrari needs going into Japan Suzuka, because, oh dear, behind Ocon, behind Stroll, behind Albon. Not how Ferrari would have wanted to start the season, is it? But maybe Carlos Sainz just did upgrade. Although he's not able to get the most out of the Williams at the moment. It will come, but he is struggling. I think it's very fair to say. He said it himself post-race. So the top 4, very tight, early doors. This is what we want to see. Okay, trading wins, trading places throughout the season. I want to see multiple, more than 2. I want to see 4 different drivers possibly winning the drivers' title going into the final race. It's a lot to ask over a 24 race season, but I would love to see it. Alex Antonelli, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, 22 points. Albon 16, Ocon 10, Stroll 10, Hamilton 9, Leclerc 8, Hulkenberg 6. Ollie Behrman scored 4 points. Of course, he managed to recover really well to P10 on the road and then benefited from both Ferraris being disqualified. So that bumped him up to P8, which is 4 points. Yuki Tsunoda 3 points in the sprint. And then finally, Carlos Sainz with his singular points, rolling it all out. So that's the driver standings. Team standings. McLaren opening up a little bit of an advantage, but still only 21 points between them and Mercedes. McLaren on 78, Mercedes on 57, Red Bull Racing on 36. Then Williams and Ferrari both level on 17 points. Haas 14. 14 points for Haas. Damn, I'm so... You know what? Like, that's the main thing I've come around, because it would have been so disappointing to go throughout all of this season and Haas being half a second off the back of the pack. I'm so glad that was just an outlier in Australia, because we are in a situation now where the Alpine, Racing Bull, Sauber, Aston Martin, Haas, Williams realistically as well. Like, any one of those 6 teams could be the worst team going into a weekend, depending on track characteristics, I believe. Maybe not Racing Bulls. Ironically, they only have 3 points, even though they've probably been the best of those 6 teams. I'd probably even say they've been better than Williams. But 2 Herculean strategy blunders, obviously in Australia, putting in Yuki too late and sticking to the 2-stop where everyone was 1-stopping this weekend in China really hurt Racing Bulls and their ability to score. The problem for Racing Bulls is that, will this early season momentum last, or will they be outdeveloped? Now, obviously, it's 2025 going into 26, so you'd assume developments are going to be fairly slim pickings for teams, but you've got to capitalise when the opportunities are there, and they have not capitalised when opportunities have been there. Hello, Yawn. Welcome. So, I mean, we've got a long way to go, but this is... I'm ready for it. I am so ready for this. We're here, but I'm in Suzuka next week. Not next week, week after next. Oh, I love Suzuka. I love Suzuka. It's not great for racing Suzuka, but it's impeccable vibes. I adore Suzuka, I really do. Right, okay, good time now for me to quickly go over any super chats. Thank you for super chatting live on YouTube. I do really appreciate it. You do not have to, but thank you. Lucas, opinion on Lance this season. Look, Lance has been consistent, and I've said this for years about Lance. You know, he has a good result in him. He's got his podiums for a reason, but nowhere near consistent enough. And then, of course, when you combine that with the clear, links to dad owns the team, right? Which is ultimately that kind of I can't remember the word for it when you get opportunities through family. There is a word for it. Someone will say it in live chat. It's something that we don't want to see in sport. Ultimately, when it should be meritocracy, like merit based. That's what we want. 100% meritocracy. That obviously doesn't happen. It doesn't mean your mum or dad has to own the team. It could be, you just bring in a lot of money, bring in a lot of sponsors, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of reasons people get seats outside of purely merit. We're aiming for merit and just merit, but, it is what it is. However, if Lance was good enough, then the silence would quiet down. He has shown he can be good enough. I think as well, obviously, where Lance he gives like nothing to the media and he's clearly not that fussed about being liked by the fan base because of how little he gives to the content in terms of, post-race interviews and stuff. Because he knows like people, you create opinions, you create human opinions on these drivers based on these things. And, whether you think that's right or wrong, like that's entirely up to you. But, he's shown he can perform. I remember start of 2020, he was flying. And then he had that crash at Mugello, and that kind of seemed to derail a lot of that early season promise he had. And Lance is still young as well. I know. He's having a good moment right now. Will it last? Based on the evidence of what's happened in the past, I don't imagine it will. But so far, Lance is cooking. Thank you, Ate Your Chips as well. Williams beating Ferrari. We are so bad. Well, technically they're level with Ferrari and the constructors, but yes. And imagine, you got to say of the older drivers, that the established drivers who have moved teams. So I'm talking Ocon, Hulkenberg, Hamilton, Sainz. Sainz has struggled to adapt. Definitely, in terms of one lap pace, it has struggled, and we saw that this weekend. If you have a bad time in qualifying and then you get caught in a train of cars that you are quicker than, but there's not enough of a delta to get the move done and passed, then you're going to be having a bad time. Carlos Sainz definitely needs more time to get settled into this car. It was strong in testing. He said it himself, but he seems to have lost a bit of that edge in pace, but it will come because we all know how good Carlos Sainz is, and it's just taken a bit longer to settle in. And also, Alex is driving at a really good level at a team that he's been at for a good number of years now. And yeah, I mean, I believe in Alex, of course I do, right? I'm not surprised in Alex's performances. I'm a bit surprised that Carlos Sainz hasn't adapted as quickly, but I have no doubt in my mind that he will. It's different cars at the end of the day. Whether your car's at the front or the back or middle of the pack, you still have to adapt to the nuances, the style, to get the maximum out of that package, whether or not it's the quickest car or the slowest car, right? And Williams is obviously somewhere in the middle. It will come, but time will tell, I guess. And thank you, One New Zealand. The season has been nothing but pain. Okay, interesting. So obviously New Zealand implies Liam Lawson, maybe a Ferrari fan as well. But I imagine New Zealand is the primary. I mean, we talked a lot about Liam in the post-sprint CHINWAG because, of course, we'd had qualifying as well. And, unfortunately, he was able to make no inroads in the race. They massively changed his setup, hence why he started from the pit lane and was not able to make any progress at all. It's Max has said things, Liam said things. There's a lot of rumours swirling around. I think, in short, I think it would be absolutely insane to swap him out after 2 races, when one was rain like crazy around a track Liam never raced in Australia, and 2 was a sprint weekend around a track Liam's never raced at, in a car that is clearly very, very difficult to drive. And I completely agree with Max. Max literally said he feels like Liam would be doing a better job in the Racing Bulls than he is in the Red Bull. To give him 2 races and then swap him out would be ridiculous. That is ridiculous, because you're not giving Liam you're putting away too soon, right? Because I think there's still a chance, right? More weekends in, more settled in. There's a lot of scrutiny, a lot of pressure, of course there is. But Liam could potentially still get to that place where he needs to be. It's been a terrible start, granted, but you have to acknowledge those factors. You have to acknowledge how that's played into it and how close it is as well, right? How close it is. Even if you're in a good car, even if you're in a good car, if you're not confident in that package, you're going to get caught out. So, but I mean that's basically my opinion on the stretch. So, hold your nerve. The one New Zealander, all right? Hold your nerve. I'm sure he'll still be in the car in Japan. It'd be absolutely ludicrous if he's not in the car in Japan. No, surely not. Thank you, Colville. RBs have been let down by their strategy in both races. Their finishing position is nowhere near their pace, absolutely. And again, if they don't capitalise, there's no guarantee that we go to a different track with different characteristics, and other teams bring developments that not at the same rate as they would typically because of focus on 26, but there will still be stuff that's been cooking and is stuff that have started working on at the end of last season, before these new regs got fully signed off, or at least not signed off, but like you can actually start actioning them. So yeah, that's concerning for Racing Bulls, because it is so tight at the bottom. If they're not exploiting the opportunities they get, they could be in trouble. Thank you, Ayman, as well. Poor Liam, if the new reports of him out are true. Now, again, nothing's been confirmed at all. It is quite surprising. You've seen like Autosport and Motorsport.com talk about Liam's going to be potentially out for Suzuka, which again, in my opinion, is crazy. Like, they must have seen Red Bull chose Liam over Yuki for that seat, right? And there might have been some issue, like whether it's Honda was an issue or didn't believe in Yuki's mindset, but they must have seen data to indicate that there was an underlying pace in Liam, because they tested Yuki in the Red Bull as well, that there is pace there. So you need to give. It's clearly a difficult car, because you've had 3 established, known quality drivers look like absolute mugs in it, right? So that can't happen. And I'm not talking from anything that's like fair and just and righteous, right? At all. I'm talking from Red Bull's point of view. That would be so short-sighted, I think, to not even fully give Liam, give him half a season, give him 12 races to actually, right, is there the potential this could actually work? And he's just had a very, very bumpy start, but it's been like unfortunate conditions, right, for these first 2 Grand Prix. Like, give him a chance, for crying out loud. Come on. And look, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least right, we know we've given it a good go with Liam, and we know it's not going to work. But you can't do that off of 2 Grand Prix. You just can't. That's ridiculous. Thank you, Daniel, for the super chat. With Mrs. Toto, as in Susie Wolf, with Susie Wolf dismissing a challenge to Ben Sulayem for the 2025 FIA elections, could he possibly stay head honcho for the 3 full terms till 2033? Wow, Daniel, that is. I'd love Susie to step up. Obviously, it would make Toto's position at Mercedes very difficult, and obviously he's a co-team owner, so he's not like he could just kind of leave. That is complicated, I imagine, to have, I'd love Susie to do it. Don't get me wrong. I think she'd do a way better job than MBS, because I think she's got a finger on the pulse, and she, whenever I see Susie speak and what she says, I think she's got a wise head on her, and I think she'd be a really good person to lead the FIA. However, yeah, I mean, you can't really have the head of the FIA married to a team owner, not even team principal, team owner. Like, you can't really force Toto to sell his 1/3 share in the team. Like, I don't know. That feels like a bit murky. I'm no expert, right? Maybe there's precedent for stuff like that, but I just don't think that's smart, because in the same way, right, that Red Bull owning 2 teams, and credit to Red Bull for buying up Minardi, because that team would have just gone under, etc., etc. However, when you have one organisation that owns 2 teams, even when nothing's happened, it just gives fuel to the conspiracy theories when, like Yuki pulls over in Zandvoort and it happens to benefit Max. Like, obviously that wasn't calculated, but if you have Susie at the top of the FIA and then Toto and then Mercedes start doing well, everyone's going to be like, oh, bias, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, okay, do we really want to open that can of worms? That's going to then cause problems and friction in a different way. So yeah, I hope, I mean, Seb, come on, Seb, you can do it, all right? If MBS can do it, Sebastian Vettel, come on, son, right? You've helped the bees. You can still help the bees. Now, get on the FIA, mate, and get on it. Love to see it. Thank you, Antonio. Stroll to Red Bull is the solution. Stroll to Red Bull. It's taken a while, but Lance has finally bloomed, and it's his time now. It's Lance's time now. And thank you, Ragav. You've been very generous on the super chats. I do appreciate it. I still believe Carlos will outperform Alex. Yeah, look, it's a long season. With two races in, I think that outperform and outscore are like 2 different things, right? I feel like Carlos has a higher performance ceiling than Alex. I do. Like, there's a lot more evidence that Carlos Sainz can out-qualify Charles Leclerc on a fairly regular basis. He can win Grand Prix. We just haven't seen that body of evidence from Alex. So I do believe Carlos has a higher ceiling. But I reckon points this year, I said it's going to be close between the 2 of them. I reckon Alex could definitely outscore Carlos. And Alex is scoring good points at this part of the season where Carlos is struggling. So that's going to help Alex from this like teammate head-to-head, which again doesn't really matter to Williams when they're, top-end midfield. But for Alex's own sense of, he's going to want to beat Carlos. Of course he is. And Carlos is going to want to beat him. So I think that, to be honest, Ragav, I wouldn't be surprised if Carlos is outperforming Alex by the end of the year, because I do think Carlos is the bar. I'm very, very open for Alex to come in, and he's already done a fantastic job, and to just keep smashing it. I'm all about that. Thank you, Karthik. Can Lewis Hamilton keep Charles honest for the entire season? Yeah, I mean, look, I think Charles has had a really, really messy start to the season. I think Lewis's performance in the sprint, again, I think obviously qualifying played a huge role in that because of the dirty air. I think Lewis has got up to speed quicker than I thought he would. He really has. And I think, again, this move is clearly, you see Lewis, the way he's carrying himself, it's kind of reinvigorated him in a big way. So I think he can definitely keep Charles honest. Yeah, I do actually. I think we've not seen the best from Charles, and I think we've seen Lewis adapt quick. So yeah, I believe in Charles. I believe in Charles a lot, and I think he's the second best driver in F1 behind Max. And it's been a difficult, far from ideal start. He ran well in the race with that front wing damage. Who knows how much that actually affected the performance? It's very, very hard to judge around a front limited track like Shanghai, but he's got to step up. Definitely, it's a good challenge for Charles. Very good challenge for Charles. 80 chips. Stroll will fall off, guaranteed. Seen this time and time again. Look, we have seen, again, Stroll have his moments. Can he be consistent? That's always been my biggest criticism of Lance, the consistency. And he just seems to have one bad race and then it just snowballs. He's not had a bad race yet. What I'll be interested to see when he does eventually, because of course everyone has a bad race, can he bounce back? Can he maintain the levels? That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm hoping for from Lance. Thank you, Subdeep. After 3 driver changes by the end of the season, apologies to Checo should be as big as the disrespect was. Look, I think ultimately, right, and this has always been the case, whether when Gasly was at the team, when Albon was at the team, when Perez is at the team, now Lawson's at the team. The driver has to take a significant chunk, a more than 50% chunk of the responsibility, I believe, right? Gasly didn't adapt. Albon didn't adapt. Perez didn't adapt. Lawson's not adapting so far to the hardware that you've been given. It is a very difficult car. It's super high sensitivity, blah, blah, blah. It's your job as a driver to adapt to the car. However, Red Bull also, they have to take not more than 50%, I would say, because the driver is the one driving it at the end of the day. But the team do have to take a significant chunk of the responsibility. They heard Checo's complaints in, it was even like 23, wasn't it? They were talking about his complaints with the car. And it worked when Max was winning titles on his own and still being able to deliver the constructors, even though Checo was getting massively outscored. And yeah, Red Bull have always had to take a significant degree of the responsibility. But that also doesn't mean that Checo is just completely exonerated. Of course not. Like in the same way that Gasly made mistakes, he threw his toys out the pram too many times, and didn't work out. Alex he never demonstrated the confidence, and I think it was too soon for him in his career with his kind of character personality type as well. I think he really struggled with that, and that was for him to deal with, and he didn't. And Checo just he'd have his moments, but he just seemed to bury his head in the sand sometimes, and just I don't know. It was kind of like a blind belief in yourself is good to an extent, but when the performances and the results just weren't there, then Checo, of course, has to take responsibility for his performances. But it was never all Checo. It was never all Alex. It was never all Pierre. It's not all Liam right now. The team have to do better. They have to find a way to make this work, because Formula One, funnily enough, Formula One, you run two cars. You don't run one car. And Red Bull have got so used to just focusing all of their resource and focus and attention on one side of the garage and what works for one side of the garage. They back themselves into a corner. Thank you, Lowell. I am better than everyone. Alex Albon. That I am very comfortable. I am better than everyone. And he led the race on his birthday. All right, that's my boy. Love it, Alex. Thank you, Colvid. Does Max beat the Ferraris in the constructors? No, it's fast. No. Ferraris combined will outscore Max this season. No question. Ferrari were actually quite quick this weekend. I think if Charles hadn't copped that front wing damage, he could have almost definitely been on the podium. The pace was actually good. And obviously Lewis won the sprint race. So the Ferraris are not slow. They've just made a couple of setup errors in the cars, which means they're both disqualified. And Australia was an outlier. It was an outlier for Haas as well. I don't know, is that linked? Ferrari was slow in Australia. Haas was slow in Australia. Haas use a lot of Ferrari parts. But now they're fine now that they're not in Australia. I don't know, because Carlos Sainz won Australia, didn't he? So, who knows? You've been very generous today. Appreciate you, chat. David, thank you for the super chat. How much influence do you think Honda is having, jumping on the opportunity and getting Yuki in the Red Bull racing car for the last home race together before Red Bull power? You know what, David? I didn't actually think about Japan being Yuki's home race. However, you can't pull Liam out the car. But oh no, I didn't think about that. But actually, that's quite a, that in isolation is a compelling point. But still, like, to pull him after 2 races is ridiculous. But also, we've seen from quotes, Yuki's got new management. Honda have said, we're not gonna. We've done basically what we can for Yuki. So I don't think they're just gonna, move heaven and earth to get into Aston Martin. I think Yuki's kind of got to sort his own thing out, and he's driving at such a good level right now. He should be on a lot of teams' radars. So I think Yuki will be fine. I hadn't thought about that, David. Thank you, Mr. Hoppy. A rumour going around that Colapinto will be given the Racing Bulls seat while Tsunoda is promoted to Red Bull. Have you heard about this? And if so, your thoughts? That is no. My thoughts is no. That's not going to happen. That's not. Colapinto is not going to go to the racing. Hadjar's driving great. Tsunoda's driving great. Lawson's struggling, but again, like, what I'm so sure what will happen. Doesn't matter if you swap Liam for Yuki or Liam for Isaac, right? I think whether it's Yuki or Isaac in that Red Bull, they're still maybe not quite as struggling as Lawson will be, but they will still be going out in Q1, Q2, I think. I really do. And that's not a reflection on Yuki and Isaac as drivers. It's a reflection on, that Red Bull is a bastard to drive, okay? And to get up to speed, big learning curve. Max has been at that team since 2016. And it's just developed in a way, and he knows what he does, and he's the best in the world at what he does. So I honestly don't think the results would be all that different. Maybe a bit better with Yuki or Isaac at the wheel, maybe a bit. And I think Liam going back, Liam showed like yes, people look at qualifying. Oh, it was 5-0 qualifying to Yuki. That's not represented. Like the gaps were like a tenth. It was close. Yuki and Liam. You look at the race delta. You look at the race pace comparison between the two. It was Liam would just go in that racing balls and do a very similar job, I think, to what Isaac and Yuki are doing. I really do. That's what I think. I don't think it would, because again, we've had Pierre and Alex and Checo and now Liam all go into that Red Bull and not drive at a representative level of their talent that we've seen and we know. So why would it be any different with Isaac or Yuki? This is more. There's more to this than that. This is deeper than that, as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, Colapinto. Like they could have signed him last year, they didn't. He was very crashy. Alpine are still, probably going to put him in for Doohan at some point in the season. I'm glad Doohan's given a good account of himself because it gives him a maybe chance at Cadillac or somewhere else, someone else picking him up. And Alpine are clearly keeping their options open. So yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, Mr. Hoppy. I think that's going to stay a rumour. Thank you, Luis. If not for the first lap mistake, Bortoleto had incredible pace. Yeah, he did. He messed up, didn't he? Lap 1, had a spin, finishing way ahead of Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg did have damage that he copped on lap 1. He hit a curb and hurt his car. So I think that does explain how he finished relative to Nico. But yeah, I do agree that Bortoleto was doing a good job, and it's hard to shine in that Sauber. It is. Hopefully Suzuka will do him justice. I think Gabriel has already shown a lot. He really has. Like early doors at qualifying Nico, 2-1, and hang on, where is the where's the quali gap? Here it is. It is okay. It's basically even, based off comparable circumstances. There was no F2 this weekend, by the way. So that's the graphic. No F2. I want to keep the graphic in there still. Okay, I want to keep it in there still. Thank you, Dirk. So now Japan. What do you prefer, Suzuka or Fuji? I prefer Suzuka. I like a lot of Fuji apart from Final Sector. Final Sector at Fuji is awful. I detest it. It's so frustrating to drive in Gran Turismo. Does my head in. Thank you, Culver, again for the super chat. According to many reports, the Red Bull powertrain Ford engines are not progressing as well. So if Red Bull continues their current trend of going in all in on Max, aren't they, at some series? Red Bull have got some big decisions to make between now and, I guess, the start of 26. I think Max is going to give Red Bull the first season of 26 to show to them what they can do, what their new engine's going to look like. And if he does leave, I think it will be 27 to either Aston Martin. Probably Aston Martin to replace Alonso. That's probably what I'd say right now today. They give Alonso one season. Hopefully Alonso wins the title in 26. That would be phenomenal vibes. And then retires. Would he retire after winning a title? Maybe not. What's more likely is that Alonso doesn't win the title in 26 and then retires, and then Max replaces him, Aston Martin. So, yeah, I think Max will give the team time. I think he will. Like it's worked for him for so long, and they're having a moment. But Max is stuck with that team through the years when Mercedes were dominating, and he was always the bridesmaid, never the bride. He stuck with the team then, and I think he'll stick with the team now for the time being. Cram, what I dislike about Liam is how cocky he was while having accomplished nothing, flipping off Perez at the Mexican GP for like P18 and 3Q1. You know what? I think as well, like that was a mistake from Liam, definitely, to like. Yeah, he came in with that kind of elbows out, right? I'm here. I want this Red Bull seat, blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, I said this before, right? Because Liam's like a really down-to-earth, he's a nice lad, right? He is. But he didn't help himself by doing that. And this was always going to... If things didn't work out, then, you know, him getting in his tussle with Alonso, flipping off Perez, you know, some of the words he put out there, very bolshy, very like, this is my time. If you can't back that up with performance, that is going to be held against you. And yeah, that's just the way it is. And you've got, you know, a lot of Perez fans are going to look at it and be like, well, they're going to be wishing Liam to fail. I get it. And a lot of Yuki fans are going to feel the same. And I think the general consensus is that Yuki deserved the seat more than Liam. And so when it's not working for Liam, it's very easy to jump on him. The way I see it is that Red Bull have made the decision. And now from Red Bull's point of view, Red Bull need to, like, they've made the decision. So they need to stick by it at least for 12 Grand Prix to actually see what's going on. Right? Mitsuvo, here's another super chat because Tommo is not permitted to move on with us. Thank you, Mitsuvo. Final one, DH. Tommo getting a future job. What do you mean future job? I'm already there, mate. They are invoicing me. Red Bull invoicing me after this stream, because I'm already a plant. You know, that was just my first day at the office with Liam. Okay, thank you for your super chats. I do really appreciate it. Let's now get on to Le Bang and Le Clang, shall we? First, reacting to the predictions, which, I mean, I predicted race winner Oscar Piastri. Well done me. Banger drive, Gabriel Bortoleto. No, he did not have a banger drive. He did well, but obviously that lap one spin really hurt him. Clang and drive, Esteban Ocon. I almost feel like I should give myself a minus point for that because Esteban was phenomenal. P5 and a Haas. Unbelievable job from Esteban Besteban. Williams Racing banger team. I felt like maybe half a point because obviously Alex did well, didn't get disqualified, got in the points. Carlos struggling. I'm giving myself half a point for that. That could be contentious, but yeah, we'll see. They're I'm invoicing. Did I say they're invoicing me? Yeah, I'm paying them to shill for them. Double point. So. But I'll give them half a point because they kind of got lucky with double points because obviously the disqualifications. But the pace was decent. And then the Klanger team Haas, again, maybe minus point for that, but I'm just going to say no. So 1.5 points for me. And I won last weekend, Australia. I was the winner. You lot can keep a running total. It was 1-0 to me after Australia. However, after China, it's now 1-1. I'll give you that. You didn't predict race winner Lando. Banger drive Carlos, no. Clanger drive Liam, unfortunately, yes. Banger team McLaren, yes. Of course. Clanger team Haas, no. So, well done. I hope you're happy. You're the winners, okay? But what about what actually happened? Well, should we start with my banger driver this weekend? So, there were a number of good, strong candidates for this. Kimi Antonelli obviously won it. He won the official F1 banger driver, didn't he? Driver of the day. So, Ollie, very good recovery drive on the mediums, making positions, giving us something to watch because some kind of entertainment. And it was unfortunate for Ollie because I was looking earlier in Q1, obviously he went out. He didn't get to set his final lap. And when you look at their second comparative laps, Ollie went quicker than Esteban, but then Esteban got to set another lap where the track had ramped up a little bit more, and that was unfortunate for Ollie because he felt like he did have the pace in qualifying, he just didn't get the lap in. However, in the race recovered very, very well. Obviously, Oscar Piastri, 2 laps good enough for pole, comfortable win. Most weekends, that guarantees you a banger drive. However, I've gone with Esteban. I think given where Haas were last weekend, given he is an experienced driver in a new team, which I think is quite a difficult adjustment to make, arguably compared to rookie where you don't know anything else. Such a bad weekend in Australia. A lot of laps in testing, but not a positive test. And P5 finishes ahead of Antonelli. Obviously helped by Antonelli's damage. I think Esteban can get the plaudits. And it's good to see because again, he's not. I've got a soft spot for Esteban. You know that if you watch my stuff, you know I've got a soft spot for him. All right, he gets a lot of stick. He's not one of the most light drivers on the grid, but I think he's a lovely bloke and a great racing driver, and he showed it today. So well done, Esteban. Piastri snubbed. Oh, there you go. Can't win him. I mean, look, I didn't. Lando won in Australia, and I went with Antonelli as my banger driver because it was an unbelievable debut, and I'm giving it to Esteban this time out. But what about you lot? Well, 2,166 of you voted. Thank you very much for voting. And there's a slight issue. Obviously, I want to post the poll as soon as the race is done. However, things happened after the race, didn't they? Namely with Ferrari and Alpine. So, yeah, most of you voted before the Ferraris both got disqualified, which will reflect in the poll. So, your banger driver this weekend for the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix is Oscar Piastri with 32% of the vote, ahead of Esteban Ocon with 32% of the vote. Just to double check the numbers, because you can't see the exact numbers. Of 2,166 responses, Oscar Piastri got 698 votes, which is 32.4%. So I've rounded that down. And Esteban Ocon got 688 votes, which is 31.9%, which I've rounded up. So there are actually 10 votes in it for Oscar. Oscar is the winner of your banger driver this weekend. 20% Ollie Behrman and 5% Max Verstappen, who, again, I guess once again, like, Max extracted the ceiling of his car, most likely. It definitely feels that way. Again, when you're seeing the teammate struggle so much as well, it does just kind of bring into focus just how good a job Max does do in that car. But it doesn't add up to 100%. Turtle King, don't start, Turtle King, all right? Okay, banger driver for you, Oscar. Banger driver for me, Esteban. Okay. Clanger driver for me, I take no pleasure in this, but of course, I mean, it's Liam. I have to give it to him again, okay? I have to give it, I can't not, okay? Because it was qualified last, started from the pit lane, made zero progress in the race. I mean, he finished, but not good, okay? I'll be the first to say it's been two horrific weekends to start your F1 career. I still believe, give him 12. Just give him 12. That's all I'm saying. Give him 12. That's what you gave Pierre. Give that to Liam. And your clanger drive is also Liam. 63% of you went with Liam. 16% Jack Doohan. Jack did have a messy weekend. He had contact in the sprint, didn't he? And then he got a 10-second time penalty for his move on Isaac. I think, like, look, that was always going to get penalised for a 10-second for Jack. I think he would have given that place back, but I think Alpine probably were like, you know what, this is a good opportunity for you to kind of show us your defensive drive. And he did keep Isaac behind. Apart from that, he was he apart from the 10-second the lock up where he pushed Isaac wide, he did a good job defending against Isaac and did keep him behind. But yeah, that was not ideal. Again, I think Doohan's underlying pace is very, very comparable to Pierre's. His race execution, there has been clearly a difference there. I hope that will come with time, because I want to see drivers who deserve to be here get an opportunity. And I think Jack deserves to be here. So we'll see. 6% Science, yeah, difficult one for him. And 4% Hulkenberg, he was carrying damage. But yeah. Tomo, this is his 13th race. No, I mean, give him 12 in the Red Bull. not 12 overall, okay? He's not done 13 races in a Red Bull. He's done 2 races in a Red Bull, okay? And clearly, this is one thing we can all say, right? Finally on Liam. Your ability in a racing bulls and your ability in a Red Bull clearly do not correlate, right? There's clearly not a correlation between how well you drive the racing bulls and how well you drive the Red Bull. Because we saw that from Pierre. As soon as Pierre went back to Toro Rosso, he got his P2 in Brazil. Like, come on. Come on now. Right, okay. So banger driver, Oscar, clanger driver, Liam, for you. My banger team, pretty easy, Haas. For them to bounce back the way they have was simply lovely. So well done, Haas. Good to see. Very relieved to see that they're not going to be stinking up the place this year. Happy with that. Well done, Haas. And your banger team, also Haas. 60% of the vote, 37% of you went with McLaren, and 1% of you went with Mercedes. That's the only other meaningful, it's not even meaningful, 1%, but there you go. Which adds up to a full 98% of the vote. Thank you, everyone. Because that does add up to 98%, which is what matters. Well done, Haas. Happy with that. And then clanger team, for me, Scuderia Ferrari. Okay. Pace was decent. Damage wasn't the team's fault. You know, I think Charles it was more on Charles, definitely the contact. Lewis is just taking his line, and Charles was just a bit over optimistic and causes the damage, gets through the race, and then both the cars get disqualified because they don't pass well. Charles Leclerc was underweight. Lewis had rinsed too much of the skid block underneath the car, the plank, whatever you call it, which is simply a mistake that a top tier F1 team should not be making. Now, of course, we did see this in Mercedes and George in Spa, where there was the anticipation for a 2-stop. George ended up doing a 1-stop and then came in underweight. When teams anticipate a 2-stop and get a 1-stop, this can happen if they take too many liberties and don't leave themselves enough tolerance, basically, because you're wearing through more of the rubber. I just lowered my desk. Back you come. And they effed around and they found out Ferrari. They tried to fly too close to the sun and they got burnt. So not good from Ferrari. We are checking. They effed up. They big time. Big clang from Ferrari. And your clanger team, Racing Bulls, 50% of the vote, 22% Ferrari, 18% Sauber, 4% Alpine. Now, again, most of these votes would have come in before the Ferrari double disqualification was announced. However, to be fair, Racing Bulls, in terms of opportunity lost, right, by running the 2-stop, and they just were like, no, we're just going to do 2-stop. They didn't look at what was happening. They clearly didn't take in the context that everyone else was going 1-stop, and they just blindly went with 2-stop because that was the original plan. And they went from potentially an alright number of points to no points. In Racing Bull's position, you can definitely argue that this is Ferrari was a setup clang. Racing Bulls was a strategic clang. And they're quite equal clangs in a way because Racing Bull still ended up with no points. But those points are more valuable to Racing Bulls because they're going to be in and out. Some races they just won't have the pace to get in the points at all. They did this weekend and they clanged. So, as much as yes, you would have almost certainly voted Ferrari if the poll was live right now. You didn't. So, Racing Bulls, sort it out. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. So, here's the totals. 2 weekends out of 24 in. I'm just going to keep a running order of how many, who gets the most banger drive votes, clanger drive. So these are mine. So Antonelli Ocon, 2 for Lawson, 1 Mercedes, 1 Haas, 1 Ferrari for the categories, and then yours as well. So that's just a running total we're going to keep as the year goes on. Right. Cool. Excellent. Lovely. We've been live for 54 minutes and we're not done yet. Okay. We're not done yet. We're going to go through team by team just to cover off any other things I might have missed. I'll do my best not to miss anything. And then we'll do some bits and bobs questions at the end, starting with Alpine. Yeah, I've been a bit... It's funny because obviously all this talk of flexi wings, right, rear wings going into this weekend and that tolerance being tightened up from 2mm to 0.5mm on the static load test with 750 newtons of force, which is 75 kilos put on those bits at the side. And it was McLaren, Ferrari, Haas and Alpine, the drivers who were the teams that were targeted, I guess, or thought to be, thought likely to not pass the test. And ironically, McLaren haven't had to change anything and got a 1-2. So it's not affected them. Ferrari were actually more competitive than they were in Australia, and Lewis won the sprint race, so it doesn't seem to have affected them. Haas got double points and took a massive step forward relative to Australia, so it doesn't seem to have affected them. But Alpine, now obviously in Australia they weren't amazing, but they were, Gasly got to Q3, Jack probably would have got to Q3 without the yellow flags. So they were a top 10 car in Australia, and this weekend just not great. So maybe that change to the wing has affected Alpine somewhat. Been a bit disappointing, to be honest. Was expecting more from Alpine at the start of this season. Was expected, obviously, especially in the hands of Pierre. Jack's got to get up to speed, and I think Jack's done a good job over a lap again. I don't know. I feel like 2 races in, I would say, actually, here we go. This is the perfect opportunity. There's 2,230 of you right here. Thank you all for, and make sure you like the stream. Right, little quick reminder. Actually, I don't even need to tell you that. I can tell me from the past to tell you that, which is what I'm going to do right now. Enjoying this podcast, please give it a good rating. 5 stars would be lovely. A comment, engage however you can. It helps get the CHINWAG out to the world. There we go. See, look. Why would I waste my why would I waste my voice telling you this live when I can just remind you to like and subscribe from the past? Right. How has Jack performed relative to your expectations in the first 2 weekends? I want to get an idea of how you're thinking Jack's doing compared to your expectations, right? So if you're expecting really high things from Jack and he's been mid, then it will be below your expectations. If you're expecting nothing from Jack and he's been mid, then it's above your expectations. Better, equal, or below. Because, so me personally, he's performed above expectations. I think practice-wise, I think quali-wise, he's really held his own. The races have been messy, but again, Australia was chaos. And he crashed straight away. And, Shanghai and the sprint as well, it was messy. But, I mean, Bortoletto's had a spin, I think benefit of doubt and concession, all in all, I think Jack's slightly overperformed on my expectations. And he's certainly not made it easy for Alpine to make a decision right now on him. I think Jack will definitely get half a season. I think he's already done enough to be like, right, give me half a season at least. And if it starts to wobble and he starts to struggle, maybe they'll put Colapinto in. But I think Jack's done enough to buy himself some time, I would say. What do you think, though? Let me know in the poll. Let me just double check if there's any super duper. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Doha, for the super chat. Appreciate it. Hassan Alpine admitted it in FP1 commentary. Admitted what? Have I missed something? Hassan Alpine admitted. Oh, what? Admitted to the rear wing. Yeah, they had to make changes. Yeah. Komatsu was like, I think Komatsu said they had to do a setup change at Haas, and then Alpine said they actually had to change, that's harsh. Like on a flyaway, to bring this new change in that's actually making a team have to change their car when they're based in a little village in Oxfordshire. It's a bit harsh, to be honest. Martin, did I miss your super chat? I apologise. Where is it? Oh, thank you, Martin. Have you watched Esteban's YouTube channel? You know what? I have not. Is he gone all in on YouTube? Has he? Is he one of us now? Just look. What else have I got? All right. This is my job. If all the F1 drivers start, you're not gonna. Why would you watch me? You're just gonna go watch them. Like, come on. You stick to driving the cars. I'll stick to talking about you driving about the cars, right? He has 2 vids. Okay, well, listen. I've been a long-term Esteban enjoyer, okay? So if you want to collab Esteban, let me know. All right? Get on it. Mutually beneficial. Okay. 515 of you have voted. How has Jack performed relative to your expectation in the first 2 weekends? 35% of you have said he's performed better than your expectations. 57% equal. 8% below. So most of you either neutral or positive sentiment of how Jack has done relative to your expectations, again, which is all individual. So yeah, again, I don't think it's made it easy. I think if Jack got pulled out now for Colapinto, I think there would be a lot of people being like, that's not been a meritocratic decision. Certainly not in South America. I think the Argentinian fans wouldn't mind, but yeah, I don't think that would go down particularly well. Thank you, Pee Wee. After the post sprint stream, this has been a certified WOMO. Do you reckon? It's a WOMO stream. I don't know. I'll find a way to Lomo it soon enough, right? Sauber again. Hulkenberg cop damage early doors. Bortoletto, after he had his spin, he was running okay. The Sauber doesn't seem to absolutely honk, but it's still, at any moment, one of the worst cars. So, not much to say. I'm just glad, and I feel for Bottas and Joe a bit, because the car that they had last year didn't really give them any opportunity to show what they can do. Those opportunities were very few and far between. Even Bottas in China, this time last year, was running in the points and the car broke down. And it wasn't until the end of the season that car actually became somewhat competitive. And they were using a lot of Frankenstein setups, particularly on Joe's side of the garage, to try and find something. And, Nico and Gabriel were somewhat bearing the fruits. Obviously, it's still not great, but, it could be worse. We've seen worse from Sauber in the past. Ferrari, what else is there to say? Look, again, I think, Lewis has adjusted quicker than I was expecting, which is great. Charles is definitely having a bit of a wobble, but I think given the damage he had, for him to perform as well as he did today, and certainly be quicker than Lewis in the race, was promising. For them to get 0 points, it is tough, but the good thing, the difference now, right? But when I was a kid growing up, you had 16 races a season, right? So each Grand Prix is 1/16th the opportunity to score points. Now there's 24 Grand Prix. Every race is 1/24th. So each race is less. It's theoretically, mathematically, it's easier to recover if you have a stinker and a 0 point weekend, because there's so many more opportunities to score points. However, with all that considered, it has been an absolute howler start for Ferrari. I think points-wise, it's been like one of their worst starts in modern history, which again is not great, but the car is not bad. It's just, too close to the sun on setup is essentially what was the problem, and out of sorts in Australia. But again, that was a bit of an outlier. So Jorge, is it Jorge or George? I don't know. But thank you, George, for the super chat. 2 DNFs, 3 disqualification, and Lawson still not in the points. I mean, yeah. He made no progress, and he started last. So, yeah. He needed more DNFs. Did Liam, bless him. Look. Ferrari fans, and look, I know I predicted Charles to win the championship, which feels like a pipe dream right now. But the season, it is long. The time, it is there. Ferrari, I believe. Still. Somehow. Haas. Look, I've said it before. I'm just happy they're not going to be stinking up the field miles off the back. That's the main thing. I think Ollie gave a really good account of himself. He had a really difficult weekend in Australia. And for him to perform the way he's done, disappointing qualifying to miss out on that lap to possibly get him through to Q2. Him to come through the field the way he did. He was enjoying it, dropping the chows as he was going past. He liked the old switcheroo and the turn 14 hairpin. Gave a very good account of himself. We know Esteban can deliver this kind of performance. He did it again. Well done, Haas. Very interesting to see how they're going to perform in Japan. is this Australia was definitely, they're going to be closer to this level, I think, throughout the season. But again, look, Haas ended the year last year in the final 9 Grand Prix. They had at least one of their cars in the points, 8 of those 9 Grand Prix, including a double points finish in Mexico. So they ended last season strong. They stopped, but they've already seemed to have turned around what was a very, very challenging Australia. So, Ollie, do you reckon Ollie robbed of driver of the day? I gave it Esteban. I think Ollie gave us the entertainment. You know, this race would have been a 3 out of 10 without Ollie's overtakes. Racing Bulls, again, not capitalised on the opportunities that present themselves. Yuki's driving at a top level. Isaac's very close to him. What's the tweet I did yesterday? I did a tweet about Isaac and Yuki yesterday that I think's kind of interesting, right? Let me find it and I'll do a little screen share and show it you, because I thought this was quite insightful to their gap. Here we go. Right, so screen share. Hello, my little head up here. And then I'm doing window capture. And I'm doing, there we go, bosh. Let's just crop that all in so it's nice and smart. So Hadjar and Tsunoda went back and forth through qualifying today, as in yesterday. Here's the numbers. So they did 5 comparable laps in terms of they set the laps at the same time. Okay, and this was in qualifying. So first comparable lap, Yuki was 0.126 quicker. You probably can't even see this. It's too small on the screen. You don't really need to see the... there we go. 0.126 advantage Tsunoda the first one. 0.7076 advantage Hadjar on the second. Then 4/10 on the third lap. So there was a bit of a gap there. But then 7/1000 advantage Hadjar lap 13. So the 2 quick laps they did in Q3, I think they were both in Q3. I'm not sure actually. I think they were. And actually no. So I think lap 13 that was in Q2, and I think this was Q3. I think because then Hadjar got another lap in and improved again. But Hadjar was quicker than Yuki on the final. So actually 3 out of the 5 Hadjar was quicker than Tsunoda. Like Hadjar is quick. Petit Prost is what the French call him. The lad's got pace, okay? And I'm all for it. I'm all for it, okay? The seats are poison chalice. And again, this is the... You can just keep throwing drivers at a seat that consistently makes good, established, quality drivers that we know are now good, quality, established drivers look like mugs. Or you can try something different, you know? Tough. That's just how the chart works, DH. Why only lap numbers and quality rounds. That's just how it works on F1 Tempo. But you're welcome to look up the stats yourself on F1 Tempo. It's very good. Very good resource. I use it a lot. Very helpful for my quality head-to-head comparisons. But yeah, Hadjar's driving well. Tsunoda's driving well. The team is not converting the points. And it is disappointing. McLaren. Well done. 1-2. Oscar got the job done. This felt like a really important performance from Oscar Piastri. To get 2 laps in that are good enough for pole, to lead off the start, to just, be comfortable. Obviously helped by Lando's brake issue, because without the brake issue, maybe Lando could have put pressure on him. Possibly. We will never know ultimately. Was Oscar just maintaining... If Lando had put pressure on Oscar, would Oscar have found more pace? Because again, Oscar was in clean air. So there's always that caveat. You can't just say, oh, the driver in front was quicker because, clean air, DRS, they're not always a one-to-one trade-off. I think Oscar's ready to fight for a championship, and I think this is what I was hoping, that both McLarens, because the last time we had 2 teammates in a top car going for a championship, well, Nico and Lewis, wasn't it, in the Mercedes? And there was no one else around. So you have to go back even further, you know? You have to go back to like 2010, maybe? Webber and Vettel, both in a top car, but then you had other teams they had Alonso and Hamilton who were also in the mix. Probably 2010 was the last time we had two teammates in a top car going for a title and other teams close. So this is very promising. Very composed Oscar was post-race. That's just him. It's his character. And an exciting sign of things to come. I think Lando knows he's got a fight in his hands. Oscar certainly knows he's got a fight in his hands because Lando's already proved how quick he is. I'm excited for this. Well done. Well done, McLaren. Great performance. Well done, Oscar. Well done, Lando. 1-2. No dramas. Lando, obviously, I talked about it in the sprint. Lando, obviously, made his mistakes in qualifying. Lando did ultimately have quite a scrappy weekend. So he made his mistake in the sprint race, mistakes in qualifying as well, that denied him potentially a pole position at some point. Whereas, again, Oscar was just very level and very consistent, which is, again, his third season. That experience argument. I think once you're past like 50 Grand Prix, because obviously saying like how many races you've done or whatever. Oh, sorry, how many seasons you've done is only seasons used to be 16 races, now they're 24, right? So what? Oscar's on 48 starts, right? So we're getting to the point now. But I think basically once you've done 50 Grand Prix is kind of enough to be where that you are. I think, like to be right, you can stop using that concession with Oscar. I think once we're halfway through this season, it's like, right, Oscar now, time to deliver, time to get it done, and he certainly delivered this weekend. Happy days, exciting. It's what we want to see. Competition at the front, I love it. Williams. I'm not gonna get super cocky about Alex Albon, okay? Right now. Maybe halfway through the season, if the gap between him and Carlos is still as big. I don't believe it will be as big as it is. But I think a lot of you wrote off Alex and gave him no chance against Carlos. And I think I've proven, and Alex has proven, that my belief is not just delusion and not just bias, okay? There is a quality driver there in Alex. He's performed very, very well so far this season. No major mistakes, consistent. Yeah, so the thing is, he was not going to get destroyed. Like, I don't think that was ever going to happen, okay? To suggest that he was going to get destroyed was always a stretch, and I think a discredit of what Alex can do. I think Carlos will catch up. I think Carlos is the more complete driver. But within this situation right now at Williams, Alex is the stronger of the two. Time will tell. Time will tell. I was scared for a bit there. Well, look, of course, Carlos Sainz is a quality driver. And this will drag Williams forward, okay? Having two top-tier drivers. But also it's showing that Alex is not a mug, all right? He's not going to be defined by that Red Bull stint. He's not going to be defined by you raced me too hard. That's it. That's my boy. Give him the car, Valsey. Give him the car in 26 and let these men cook. Mercedes AMG, Petronas Formula 1 team. Again, George Russell. Just keep getting on the podium, George, and let everyone else take points off of each other and have their little squabbles. Because I've seen a lot of people being like, oh, George's so lucky, just inheriting these positions, doesn't do anything in the race. No, listen, being consistently up there is not easy. He's extracting the maximum from this car at pretty much every given opportunity so far this season. And it might look boring, it might look dull, he might not be fighting the McLarens for the wins, but that car isn't there. I think if the car was there, he would absolutely be fighting the McLarens for the wins. That's all he can do. And it might not be glamorous. And I know George divides opinion a lot. Okay, I know a lot of people don't like George Russell, but he's doing his job and he's a quality driver. And Antonelli has got to catch up, and he will catch up because Antonelli's got unbelievable natural pace. But George Russell is a top tier F1 driver, no question of doubt. If you give him the car, he will fight for a world championship, no question of doubt. Well done, George. Very happy with that. And Antonelli had damage, so it's very hard to analyse his race, but we saw all we needed to see in Australia about how good this kid is. So I'm excited to see more from Kimi. Mercedes constructors, look, it would take a lot for McLaren to blow up the constructors, right? Because the two favourite title protagonists in Oscar and Lando are 1-2, are the two quickest at the moment. But Mercedes constructors, if Antonelli can string some clean weekends together with no damage, time will tell. Time will tell. I feel like he's leaving race pace on the table. Look, I think Lewis was always a demon in race pace. Lewis had been at Mercedes since I say about Max has been at Red Bull since 2016. Lewis had been at Mercedes since 2014, right? So Lewis was very adept, and the team knew what Lewis needed from a car and how to get the best out of him, and that was always going to help in a race, over a race distance, when you've been at the team for that long. And I think almost in some ways, I think that somewhat explains Charles' performance relative to Lewis today, in terms of being quicker over the race distance, even with a broken front wing. But that will come. That will change. That will develop with time. And George, I feel like, has been at Mercedes long enough that he's able to kind of, dig his own feet in the ground and be like, this is my swamp. And he knows he needs to if he wants to consolidate his future of that team, because he knows that Toto believes Kim is the future. And 3 don't go into 2. Toto wants Max as well. If George can be like, look, because based off these first 3 races, 2 weekends, George, what more could George have done, right? I don't think there's anything more George can do to consolidate his position. Well done, George. Happy for him. Red Bull, we've already talked about Liam. Again, I just think, Max is doing his thing. The car isn't quite there over a race distance, but he will still put himself up there in a qualifying session to challenge, and some. You can always rely on Max to do that, to extract the maximum out of his car, because he's the best driver in Formula 1. And I do wonder. Yeah, I said this before. I think Max will give Red Bull. I know there's been the rumours are always going to swirl around Max. Will he leave? Because when you've got the best driver in F1 in a car that even with his super sensitivity setting, he can't put on pole and win, right? Like, you're going to get these questions, but also it's more for Red Bull to lose, because if he does go, it's like, who do you replace? But obviously 26, Red Bull need to make sure. Red Bull needs to, for their own good, they need to make sure for 26 they have a car that not only Max can extract the ceiling from, essentially, right? Because that's the place they're in right now. Only Max is able to extract the ceiling from this car. And anyone else jumps in it, and they're not only finishing on the podium behind Max, they're finishing, they're going out in Q1, Q2. So, I think Max holds the cards ultimately. As the best driver in F1, you're going to be holding a strong position. Ultimately, you'll be holding the cards. Whatever happens with Liam, the second seat, blah blah blah. Ultimately, can this team deliver him drivers' championships? That's the metric that he measures his success on, and he's going to want another one. It's going to be a stretch this year, but as long as he can be almost like the George Russell approach, if Max and George can just keep being 3rd and 4th, and occasionally inherit a win or get P2. And hope Lando and Oscar kind of alternate wins. And then, again, round 9, the front wing, flexi wing change is going to be, in my opinion, much more significant in terms of a change in performance than the rear wing random one they just dropped out of nowhere was. And then there's potentially an opportunity there, because it is, seemingly, more the Ferrari and the Mercedes who've been really leaning into the flexi wing stuff. Maybe both Mercedes and Red Bull benefit from that round 9 change. And again, round 9, you still got 15 Grand Prix to go after that. So a lot of time for things to change. And then finally, Aston Martin. Well done, Lance. Not so well done to Fernando Alonso's rear brake drum for catching fire. 2 DNFs for Fernando to his name. The driver stone dead last in the Drivers' Championship. I mean, I said Aston Martin, just, fire this season into the sun and don't worry about it. But come on. At least give Fernando something to fight for. Look, Lance has done a very, very good job. Will it last? We'll see. When he has a bad weekend, will he be able to bounce back? That, for me, until that happens, I can't confidently say, oh, Lance has improved or whatever, because we've seen these moments where he's driven well and then just crumples, into his own. It doesn't work out. So, well done, Aston. Well done, Lance, particularly, for extracting the most. And obviously, Fernando, caught out on the gravel in Australia. With gravel on track, was running well, was running ahead of Lance at the time. It's tight in qualifying as well, which bodes well, which reflects well on Lance. Time will tell. Time will tell. If I had £1 for every time I've said time will tell on this CHINWAG, many more chins could be wagged. Don't even know what that means. Okay, a few more super chats and then we'll wrap this up. Thank you, Gobaru, for the super chat. Yuki versus Albon, Aston Martin second seat, 2026. Who'd you pick? So alongside Alonso in 26, if I had to pick between Yuki and Alex, that's a good question. Yuki and Alex, both drivers performing well. How much? What's the age difference between Yuki Tsunoda age? He is 24, and Alex is what? 29 now? Is he 29? 29, yeah. I mean, I think they're very close performance-wise, and I think ultimately, yes, Yuki being that bit younger, then you obviously had the Honda connection, which is only going to help Yuki's transition into the team. I probably would go with Tsunoda if I had to pick someone, the right driver for Aston Martin alongside Fernando. I'd probably go with Tsunoda over Albon. And also Alex is onto a very good thing at Williams. But they're very close performance-wise. Yuki's got 5 years on Alex, as in 5 years younger, which longevity-wise will benefit. Felipe Drugovich, you got to say does deserve an opportunity, sure, but there's a lot of you could say the same about Porsche, Ilott. So many examples of quality junior talents not getting the opportunity. Right, okay. I've spoken for plenty long enough, hour and 23 minutes. Really do appreciate you all being here. I have Kid J Webb, Christopher DH, Bites, Finn in the Blanks, Doha, Carter, Fantastic Frog, Henry, Goboro, Jake, Somebody, Daniel, Christopher, Doha, Patrick. Lovely jubbly indeed. I do really appreciate you all taking the time. Thank you for watching. Please drop a like on this stream. And if you're here in the live chat, please leave a comment below as well, because you've been engaging loads in the live chat, but also comments help the stream. I would really appreciate it. Just tell me what my worst take is, or your best take is, or something. And I'll do my best to get back to as many as I can in the first kind of couple of hours. So thank you again. Appreciate you taking the time. We've got a week off. Video, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Actually, I need to think about that next. What video I'm going to do. Try and put it out maybe tomorrow evening, late, or Tuesday. Depends how much of an edit I want to do, how detailed of an edit. So if I think about that, maybe let me know in the comments what video I should do this week. What should be my weekly video? I think I know what I'm going to do. And Patreon stream. Christopher, yes. Oh my God, yes. Absolutely. Keep an eye on the Patreon. We'll be there shortly. My name's Tomo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.